Steph, welcome to Daily Xtra.
Thank you, I'm so happy to be here.
You're a trans woman and YouTube personality here at Pride Toronto's Trans Rights panel.
Yes.
Why is it important for you to speak out about trans rights?
There's a lot of history that people aren't aware of that really interlocks with the history of gay rights and LGBT plus rights in general. There's been a lot of trans people at the front of these things that have never really been acknowledged as trans. So it's important now that we have a spotlight on for trans youth, right, tonight, four of us,
Yes.
to talk about sort of what we're doing in our forms of activism and how the past activism has affected us and made our lives easier. It's just, I feel, really important to bridge the history of it and the present day of it.
Yeah, and your platform, YouTube, has become very popular.
Thank you.
What made you create it?
I started actually in high school. It was a way for me to express myself because I was not popular. I was not. Oh my gosh. It was basically my social experience. I didn't go to parties. I didn't really hang out with people.
Yeah.
So the internet was where all of that happened for me, where I learned to be myself, where I learned to do things, was the internet. Everything was the internet. So it just felt natural to me that my work would also be the internet. And
Yeah.
it's been a hobby for so long, and then about last year, the beginning of last year, it really started as my life.
You've been posting monthly updates throughout your transition. What's it like transitioning from a male to female online?
Well, in my personal experience, I feel like I have a fairly thick skin, so a lot of the hatred and the negative comments that I get, I just remove entirely, and it's not necessarily to spare my feelings of seeing them. I just want to make sure people that are coming to these videos that are trying to learn about themselves, maybe possibly they might be trans as well, right? I don't want them to experience that hatred.
Okay.
So it's definitely not all fun and games. There's a lot of stuff that I don't really share, not about myself, but about the way the platform is in regards to negative commenters, hatred. But I work really hard to curate that, right? So that people aren't feeling attacked when they come to my stuff.
Of course.
But it's also very liberating.
Yeah.
Because in the past, a lot of transition has been considered like a thing to hide or something, you know, like people used to tell trans women to make up fake stories about their lives. Like, oh, they were a Girl Scout and they did this and that. And I don't think that's a very good approach. And obviously we've come a long way in learning about trans people and about our biology and about our brains and everything. And generally that's not acceptable anymore to do that. So I'm glad for that. But I think it's important to celebrate being trans, not just to have it as a secret part of your life that's kind of hidden. It should be very, to me anyway, it's a very big part of who I am, and it's something that I want people to know about.
And what else do you hope to achieve by being so open about your transition?
Number one thing for me is educating people. I want to make sure people have resources and knowledge when it comes to trans people, who trans people are, you know, how many different kinds of trans people there are. So I make sure to acknowledge that my experience is only mine in every video, and I hope people understand that. My end goal really with this kind of stuff is to normalize it, right? So everybody can, for example, like an 8-year-old kid goes to school and the teacher says, split up into boys and girls, and they just aren't sure where to go, which is something that I experienced a lot. I always wanted to go to the girls' side, but I just was like, oh, I better not. And it was bad, like it didn't make me feel good. So I want children to be able to go home at 8 years old and tell their mom that, and then their parent would have the resources and the equipment to help them, right? Instead of just being like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
You know, I want it to become normalized, and I feel any kind of media exposure is a way to do that.
And for these kids, what type of advice would you have for them if they are considering transitioning?
Go online, talk to trans people if you can. When I moved to Toronto, it was before I started transitioning, it was 3 or 4 years ago. I've never met a trans person up till then, right? So then I was working at a Shoppers Drug Mart. I met a trans woman that came in. I did her makeup all the time, and the more time I spent with her, the more I learned about myself. So I would say if it's something in your mind, if you are wondering if you are trans, connect with a trans person and just learn about them and their experience if they're open. Or, you know, go to YouTube and find one of many YouTubers that do the same thing that I do, and just see how their experience feels to you.
Well, you're very open. Is there anything you won't discuss regarding your transition?
No, I don't think so. I think I feel a responsibility to be open about it because it's kind of what I've taken as my job. But I think it's important for everybody to understand that not everybody wants to discuss these things. And like you just asked, that's a perfect question, right? Is there anything you wouldn't want to discuss? And for me, there's not, but I make sure whenever I'm having a discussion on trans topics to be in control of the conversation, right? So if it goes in a certain way, I might nudge it in another way or correct wording. I think it's not just like a, what is the word? Like a fast bam bam, here's all the questions and answer them all for me, right? It should be kind of like a discussion, right?
Discussion, yeah. So how far do you think Canada needs to go to reach equality for the trans community?
We are better off than many places, that's true, but there is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of things that people aren't aware of, that even I'm not aware of. There's a lot that I could learn still. I know that we could make transition more accessible. I know that we are still better than many places, but there's still a lot that could be done. Different other gender confirming surgeries other than SRS, we could help maybe get that covered. And in general, I feel like one of the most important things when it comes to any kind of marginalized group is having the language and the discussions around them be supportive instead of like attacking. And this is kind of more global than just Canada, but I find especially in media with Caitlyn Jenner, and let's be very clear, I don't think she's the only or the best role model for trans people, but the media just attacks her and is like, oh, she's going to detransition and this and that, and it's not true. It's not true. So right now the conversation globally is very much about trans people instead of including us. And that's something that I think we could change in Canada and everywhere else.
And lastly, how have the recent shootings in Orlando affected your work?
Ooh, I woke up, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Yesterday morning, and I checked Twitter and it was everywhere. And in my circle of people that I follow, which are generally people that do similar work to me, it was a big thing. And I noticed that a lot of the people who would consider themselves allies maybe, or you know, they would go to gay pride and gay pride's so fun and all this stuff, they were kind of silent about it. And it made me realize that you know, I can talk all about this experience, but if people aren't ready to see it from other points of view, it's not going to do anything. So I guess it kind of gave me a wake-up call, right? I need to do more. I need to work harder. I need to educate better, so that we can maybe prevent these things from happening. We can help these people that are confused and angry before they lash out at us.
Looks like you're doing a great job so far.
Thank you. I appreciate it.